Have you ever, like, prepared so intensely for something? Maybe you studied for days and days for a major certification exam, or, I don't know, you spent 3 weeks just completely over-rehearsing a presentation for work.
Oh, yeah, like practicing in front of the mirror until the words don't even sound real anymore.
Exactly. And then the actual moment arrives, and your brain just completely freezes.
Just a total blank.
Right. You look at the very first question, which is, a question you absolutely knew the answer to in practice, and your mind just immediately starts running these massive defensive maneuvers.
You start thinking, well, it can't be that simple.
Yes. You're like, wait, this must be a trick. So you overthink it, you second-guess your own preparation, you map out like 5 different hypothetical scenarios, and you end up getting a perfectly easy question completely wrong.
Which is just the worst feeling in the world.
It really is. But if you have ever experienced that incredibly frustrating phenomenon, you are definitely not alone.
Not at all.
And honestly, more importantly, you aren't just suffering from some sort of personal flaw. There is actually an entire grammatical structure in another language dedicated to that exact feeling.
Which is just wild to think about.
It is. So welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at this deeply philosophical quirk in Japanese grammar that really perfectly captures the human tendency to overdo things.
And of course, the messy, unintended consequences that inevitably follow when we do that.
Right. Because it is a universally human experience. I mean, we all hit that tipping point where extreme effort just suddenly crosses the line into complete self-sabotage.
Yeah, but what we are examining today is how an entire language has basically encoded that specific psychological boundary right into its syntax.
Which is fascinating.
It really is. It's not just a vocabulary word, It's a structural worldview.
Absolutely. And to get to the bottom of this, we are pulling from a really compelling stack of linguistic sources today. We're looking closely at excerpts from 2 specific guides. The first is called Amari, the Japanese grammar of emotional excess, and the second is The Syntax of Excess.
Both really excellent texts.
They are. So our mission today is to explore this one specific word, Amari, and figure out how a simple piece of grammar functions as a cautionary tale about human behavior.
Sounds like a solid plan.
But before we get into the heavy implications of societal failures and emotional short circuits, we need to address the elephant in the room for anyone listening who has ever actually tried to learn Japanese.
Oh yeah, the trap.
Right, because this word is notorious. Okay, let's unpack this. It is basically the ultimate linguistic bait and switch.
It absolutely is. I mean, if you talk to anyone who has studied the language for a while, they will tell you this word just lulls you into a false sense of security for years.
And then it just pulls the rug right out from under you.
Completely.
So let's kind of lay out the beginner experience first. If you take a basic Japanese class, or maybe you're just playing around on a language app, you encounter the word Amari very early on.
Super early.
But you learn it in a very safe, very polite context, right? Beginners are taught to pair Amari with a negative verb.
Which generally translates to not very.
Exactly. So if someone offers you a food you hate, instead of bluntly saying, I dislike this, you say something like, Amari suki janai, meaning, I don't like it very much.
Yeah, it's a soft, gentle way to express a lack of something. You use it specifically to avoid extremes.
Right.
It's one of the very first conversational tools you get to soften your speech. So you learn it purely as an expression of deficit. You're falling short of a baseline.
Makes sense.
But then, as learners progress toward fluency, specifically when they hit that upper intermediate to advanced tier, which is known as the N2 level, the floor just completely drops out.
Wait, it's not just a subtle shift. It's a complete 180-degree turn from expressing a lack of something to expressing an overwhelming excess.
A total 180. The rules just reverse. You stop attaching Amari to negative words entirely. Instead, you attach it to an affirmative, positive word.
Oh, wow.
And suddenly, it functions as a noun indicating absolute overwhelming excess. It translates roughly to so much that, or out of an extreme.
So it goes from not very to way too much.
Exactly. The structure morphs entirely.
But wait, how does a language even justify that? I mean, a word can't just mean a mild lack of something and an overwhelming excess of something at the same time.
Well, it seems weird, right?
Yeah. If I spent 3 years using a word to politely decline a cup of tea, and then someone tells me I have to use that exact same word to describe it, like a massive emotional breakdown, I would think they were messing with me.
I get that. It definitely sounds contradictory until you understand the underlying logic of the baseline.
Okay, lay it on me.
So think of a flat line representing normal, everyday existence. In the beginner usage, you're operating just underneath that baseline. You don't quite like something enough to cross the line into actually liking it.
Okay, I'm with you.
But in the advanced usage, you aren't just crossing the line, you're shattering it by going way, way over it. The common thread here is that Amari deals with a deviation from the norm.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so the surrounding grammar is what signals to the listener whether you're operating in a state of deficit or a state of extreme excess.
I suppose that makes sense conceptually. But mechanically, how do you actually build this in a sentence without just confusing everyone in the room?
Right, because the context is doing so much heavy lifting.
Exactly. If the meaning flips depending on the surrounding grammar, the rules for putting the sentence together must be incredibly strict.
They are very strict. The source text, the syntax of excess, outlines the formula, and it's actually quite rigid. Because this is an advanced structure, it carries a certain weight, you know?
Right, it's not just casual slang.
Exactly. It isn't slang you just throw around at a bar. It has a formal, almost dramatic tone to it.
So what's the formula?
Well, if you're attaching a noun to it, you absolutely must use the connecting particle no.
Okay. Noun plus no plus Amari.
Right. And if you're attaching a verb, you have to use the plain present tense or the plain past tense.
Got it.
And finally, if you're using an adjective, it has to be a specific type called a na adjective, and you actually leave the na attached to it.
Wow. So there was a very clear mathematical formula to it.
Very clear.
But, as I was reading the source material, the thing that stood out to me wasn't the formula itself, but the massive restriction placed on it.
Yes. The condition.
It can only attach to affirmative forms. It kind of reminded me of those incredibly intense warning labels you see on prescription medicine bottles.
Like, do not take with alcohol under any circumstances.
Exactly. This grammar point basically comes with a strict warning label that says, do not attach to negative actions. So just to be totally clear, if I am exhausted, I can't say, because I didn't sleep too much, I am tired.
No, you absolutely cannot.
That's fascinating.
And that restriction is actually the key to understanding the entire philosophy behind the word. It must be a positive action or a present state that is pushed too far.
So you have to actually be doing something.
Right. You have to be actively doing something or actively feeling something to such an extreme degree that it literally breaks the system. It's the presence of an action, not the absence of one, that triggers the effect.
But why, though? If the word just means excess, why can't there be an excess of not doing something, like an excess of laziness?
Because the structure is designed to force accountability onto an active choice.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, you can't just blame your problem on a void or something you forgot to do. You have to trace the failure back to the specific thing you did, but that you did too much of.
Okay, let me challenge that for a second. If it's just about tracing a result back to an active choice, what if the result is great?
What do you mean?
Like, can I use this structure to say, I studied so intensely, I got a perfect score on my exam?
No, you cannot.
Really?
Really. What's fascinating here is that this is the second major rule that makes the syntax so unique. The sources heavily emphasize that this structure is inherently result-oriented, but the result is practically always a negative consequence, or at the very least, an abnormal state.
So you can't use it for a win?
No, it is not used for success. It's used exclusively when the excess breaks something.
Wow. So the grammar itself dictates that extreme behavior is inherently doomed.
Exactly. And the classic example provided in the text is something very relatable for most of us, drinking too much coffee.
Oh yeah, story of my life.
Right. So the sentence structure uses the verb for drinking too much, which is Kangaesugita, and attaches that to Amari.
So out of an excess of drinking coffee.
Exactly. A result occurs.
Yeah.
And that result is Namura Nakunata becoming unable to sleep. You tried to do a good thing. You tried to stay awake, be productive, power through your work.
But you overshot the mark.
Yep. The excess of a positive intention created a negative physical reality where your body just refuses to shut down.
That's such a great visual. It's like a mechanical failure. The body is an engine, the coffee is the fuel, and you basically just flooded the engine.
That's a perfect way to put it.
But while the coffee example is a great way to understand the mechanics, the sources spend a massive amount of time focusing on how this grammar is used for things we can't physically consume.
Yes, the internal landscape.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. The texts explicitly note that Amari is heavily relied upon to express potent, deeply human feelings, like joy, sadness, surprise, or intense worry.
Moving from the physical to the emotional is definitely where this concept gains its real weight.
It feels a lot heavier.
It does. Think of human emotion as an electrical current running through a house. Under normal circumstances, the wiring handles the current just fine. You feel happy, you smile. You feel sad, you frown.
Simple enough.
But what happens when a massive surge of electricity hits the system?
The circuit breaker trips. The system shuts down to protect itself, and you just sit in the dark.
Exactly. Amari is basically the linguistic equivalent of that circuit breaker tripping.
I love that analogy.
The guide, Amari, the Japanese grammar of emotional excess, provides two really powerful examples of this emotional short circuit. The first deals with joy.
Okay.
The text describes a scenario using the noun for joy, which is Ureshisa, connected with no to Amari, so out of an excess of joy.
And what's the consequence?
The consequence of that excess is bursting into tears.
Oh, wow. Which perfectly illustrates that abnormal state rule you mentioned earlier.
Exactly.
Because crying is biologically and socially associated with pain or distress. Joy is supposed to elevate us. But the joy in this scenario was so overwhelmingly massive that the brain's normal emotional wiring just couldn't process it.
The breaker tripped.
Right. And the physical result was tears.
The system was completely overloaded by a positive emotion, resulting in a physical reaction usually reserved for trauma. And the language treats it as a mechanical inevitability.
It's just cause and effect.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Now look at the second emotional example the text provides, which deals with profound grief.
This one was intense.
It really is. It outlines a scenario where a woman's husband dies suddenly in an accident. The sentence uses kanashimi, the noun for sadness, paired with no amari, an excess of sadness.
And the result?
The result is that she fundamentally loses her mental health. She becomes mentally ill.
That is an incredibly heavy sentence to analyze. But it really shows how much respect the language gives to human emotion.
It does.
It doesn't just say, she was very sad. By using this specific grammar point, it acknowledges that the grief was an overwhelming physical force. It was an excess of emotion that literally broke her baseline reality.
Yeah. If we connect this to the bigger picture, it touches on something much larger, the concept of linguistic determinism.
The idea that the language we speak shapes how we perceive the world.
Exactly. In English, we might describe someone as being overcome with emotion, but it's largely poetic.
Right, it's just a figure of speech.
But in Japanese, there is a strict grammatical formula that essentially says, when X emotion reaches Y level of excess, Z abnormal state will occur.
It's codified.
It encodes the psychological reality that intense emotion disrupts us into the everyday syntax of the language. It doesn't judge the emotion, it simply documents the inevitable consequence of the excess.
That is so profound. If a language constantly forces you to link extreme effort or extreme emotion to things breaking down, it must change how you view goal setting.
Oh, without a doubt.
It creates this structural awareness of collateral damage. And that brings us to, I think, the most fascinating part of the source material.
The macro level.
Yes. Because this phenomenon, this paradox of effort, it doesn't just happen inside a single human brain. If a single human brain short-circuits from too much effort, what happens when a collective group of brains makes decisions together?
It scales up.
Exactly. The sources show how this grammar scales up to describe systemic societal failures.
Because the mechanics of excess operate the exact same way on a macro level. A city council can flood the engine just as easily as an individual drinking too much coffee.
To understand how that scales, we have to look at the transition point. And the text provides a perfect example that ties right back to the scenario we opened the show with. The test taker.
Ah, yes.
The overthinker.
Right, so the text translates to, the test problem was easy, but out of an excess of thinking, I made a mistake. Kangaesugita Amari, an excess of thinking.
Such a classic trap.
But it's the bridge between internal emotion and external action. You didn't fail the test because you were lazy or unprepared?
No, you failed because your intention to succeed was so intense that it blinded you to the obvious answer.
Right. It is the blindness of good intentions.
And when you take that blindness and apply it to massive institutions, you get the societal examples provided in the sources.
Let's talk about those.
So the first one deals with something we all watch, the Olympics.
Okay.
The text poses a critique of the modern games, arguing that they have lost the core value of sportsmanship.
And how do they explain why?
The sentence uses the phrase kachimake oki ni suru amari, meaning because they care too much about winning and losing. Wow, that is such a profound use of the grammar. I mean, the entire point of the Olympic Games, the foundational goal, is to win.
Of course. You train your whole life to be the best in the world.
Right. But this sentence argues that the pursuit of winning has become so absolute, so hyper-optimized, that it has actually destroyed the spirit of the event itself.
The excess of the goal destroyed the environment.
Exactly.
It is the Amari effect playing out on a global stage. The organizers, the athletes, the sponsors, they optimized for victory so aggressively that they tripped the circuit breaker on sportsmanship.
It's chilling when you put it like that.
It gets heavier. The second societal example from the sources shifts from sports to urban infrastructure, and it is arguably even more critical.
The City K example.
Right. It describes a hypothetical City K. The text states that because the city prioritized development too much, they neglected the daily safety of their citizens.
Let me guess the phrasing. Kaihatsu o yusen suru amari.
You got it. Out of an excess of prioritizing development.
Again, if you're a city planner, development is your primary affirmative goal.
It's what you're hired to do.
Right. You want your city to grow, to attract business, to modernize. Prioritizing development is inherently a good thing.
Right up until the exact moment it isn't.
Yeah.
The leaders of City K likely thought they were doing a spectacular job. They were probably hitting all their metrics for growth.
High-fiving in the boardroom.
Exactly. But because their focus on development was so extreme, they lost their peripheral vision. They couldn't see the negative result, which in this case is the crumbling safety infrastructure, because they were entirely blinded by the affirmative action of building.
And the grammar, structurally, prevents the city leaders from claiming, well, we meant well.
Yes. The intention is entirely irrelevant. The grammar simply states, your excess caused the failure.
So what does this all mean? It's essentially a linguistic cautionary tale against tunnel vision.
That's a great way to look at it.
It's this built-in warning sign that says, look, no matter how positive your goal is, if you pursue it without limits, you're going to crash. It perfectly synthesizes that terrifying moment when dedication crosses the invisible line into obsession.
This raises an important question, though, doesn't it? Amari forces the speaker to acknowledge that every single action, no matter how pure the intention, has a limit.
Right.
There's a boundary line for everything in the human experience, beyond which even the most positive drives curdle into negative consequences.
Which, frankly, completely redefines what it means to learn a language for me.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the next time you find yourself staring at a vocabulary list or trying to memorize a grammar rule, remember that you aren't just learning how to order food or ask for directions. You are learning a totally new way to process reality.
You're learning a new philosophical lens.
Yes. A structure like Amari tracks the exact perilous tipping point when enough becomes too much. It proves that whether it is bursting into tears from an overload of joy, failing an exam because your brain got tangled in its own over-preparation, or an entire city neglecting basic safety in the name of relentless progress, excess always demands a toll.
It always comes with a price tag. And, looking at how Japanese handles that concept raises a really fascinating question about our own culture.
Oh.
How so? Well, we've spent this entire time dissecting how this specific language uses grammar as a warning sign against doing too much, right?
Right.
But think about English. Think about the idioms and the motivational phrases we use every single day in the West.
Oh, wow. That is an interesting contrast.
It really is. We constantly praise the idea of giving 110%.
Go big or go home.
Exactly. We have countless motivational posters telling us to push past our limits, grind it out, and leave it all on the field. We treat excess as the ultimate virtue.
We really do.
But if our language lacks a built-in grammatical warning sign for doing too much good, if we don't have a structural way to acknowledge that extreme effort inevitably causes a breakdown, are we culturally hardwired for burnout?
Oh, man. That is a brilliant point.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't have a word for the cliff, you're probably going to drive right off it.
Exactly. You won't even see it coming.
It makes you wonder how much of our sheer exhaustion is just baked into the way we speak and think. That is a heavy thought to sit with, but honestly a perfect place to wrap up today's discussion. So keep an eye on your own circuit breakers, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.